let's have a look at the skills. So this is the actual Unreal Editor, shrunk down to fit on this screen. But this is so we're using an entirely different tool when we make skills versus making traits. So here we're in the wit specialties, but I can actually go where we want to be, which is the quirk skills. So the quirk skills, these are the random little fifth skills that appear on characters. They only have 1 star. They don't do very much, and mostly what they do is get in the way of other skills that you want that character to have. And so we polled people. We asked them to make some suggestions for skills that we could add into the game. We got a bunch of kind of fun ones. Some of them are ones that we probably couldn't do. Zed von Kotmal suggested an introversion skill that would add 1 to your outpost limit, which had 2 problems. Number 1, we only have space to add 1 more outpost to your outpost limit, and I want to save it. There's got to be a special thing that we need to do that will take advantage of that last +1 outpost. So I don't want to do it for this stream. Another thing was introversion is a trait. Introversion is not a skill. And stylistically, whenever we give a character a skill, we want that skill to be something that indicates I am trained in something, I have an expertise in something, not I've just got this aspect to my personality. That's an important distinction to make. I think it really makes the system make sense, but it's something that, I mean, you are not the only one, Zed, to make a suggestion like that. We often get suggestions all over the place, within and without the team, for skills that are not really skills. Death Druid made a suggestion can throw melee weapons, which again, that would be adding an entire mechanic to the game. We talked in the traits section about how that's not something that I can easily do, but you did kind of nail the way that I would love for skills as a general rule to work in a game like this, which is it adds some kind of verb to the character, something they can do that other people can't do. And I think that the skill system in State of Decay 2 does not do that as much as I'd like it to, but that's sort of the theory. That's what we'd like to do with it. So we'll see how that goes. And yeah, there's a lot of other good suggestions. Sleight of hand, linguistics. I don't have time to implement a lot of these. And some of them, some of them already existed. Castle suggested hairdressing, which we actually already have. We've got hairdressing right here. It basically, the main thing that it does is it gives characters, where was it? It gives them a little bit of influence, because it basically an influence income, because everyone just looks so fancy. They have better reputations across the frontier, and also it gives them knowledge of chemistry, because you got to work with the bleaches and everything to be a hairdresser. Similarly, Daniel Felt suggested smuggling, but the advantages he suggested for smuggling were all the same advantages you get from driving, and so I figured, we've already got driving. We probably don't need to add smuggling, though I could see us adding a trait, which was a smuggler, that gives people the driving skill. So that's something that we could do at some point, and would do if I wasn't running out of time. So instead, let's grab this one from Matt's Nerd Coven 1, who he suggested that we should have a skill called history, which is just the study of history, the knowledge of history. And he was suggesting that maybe that would give you local history, and so we can make our landmark outposts more powerful. But again, that's a whole mechanic that I don't have access to, so I can't do the thing that you suggested. But one thing that we could probably do is just give people an experience advantage. The idea, if you know history, then you're less likely to repeat it. You make better decisions. You learn better if you have an historian on staff, basically. So let's do that. So let me try to find what would be a good one to do. Let's duplicate literature. So I'm going to copy and paste literature, and it arrives here. Let's rename it history, and it's got to check it out of source control. It's got to do a bunch of stuff, blah, 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 blah. Okay, here we go. Now let's pop open its definition. So this still looks like literature on the inside. So we'll call it history. We'll make its display name history. And we'll say something like, I hadn't actually come up with a description for this one. So the study, let's call this the study of the past and how not to repeat it. That's what we'll call that. And it's got a generic icon, because I don't think we've got a history-appropriate icon. And now we've got to give it its benefit, the thing that it does. So it doesn't give us a morale bonus, because knowing about history sometimes makes you sadder. But But skill all rate increase medium. That's actually perfect. I didn't actually realize that I was doing this. I was duplicating literature. Literature already does the thing I was hoping history would do, which is increase the rate at which you gain skills. But yeah, this is, oh yeah, it's only applied to the, so okay, this is interesting. This is one of the limitations of the skill, of the trait system, of the skill system. So if you look at the traits, when I give somebody a character buff, I can decide whether to give it to themselves only or to the entire community. But with a skill, I'm not sure I can do that. Let me pop open the actual, there we go. But let's see here. But I think maybe this, oh, that's right. So for most of the development of State of Decay 2, I couldn't do that. But I'm pretty sure that this new category here that they added very, very late does actually let me do that. So base enclave-wide buff. So I'm going to grab this buff here that was normally a base buff. For literature, it only affects you. But we could have history affect everyone. And that's how we would do that. Except the medium skill increase, that's probably kind of powerful. Let's try to find another. Here, let's go. Let's look it up. Skill all rate increase. Let's give them a minor buff rather than a major one, like the plus 25% maybe, or even tiny. Wait, why is tiny? Okay, tinier. Yeah, there we go. Let's go. Skill all rate increase tinier. I'm going to copy this text, and then I'm going to undo because we don't want to actually change what Blood Plague Survivor does. That would be a disaster. And then we'll paste it in here. Boink. And here is one of the weaknesses, one of the reasons why I like using the Undead Data Editor instead of the Unreal 4 editor. There is no content validation here. You'll notice that when I would enter things into UDE, you would get this drop down of all of the actual buffs, the real buffs that actually exist, and I would select one, and it would definitely be a real buff. I don't have that protection when I'm working in the Unreal editor. I just paste this in, and I hope I put it in the right slot, and I hope that it's all spelled correctly, because if it's not, this skill will do nothing. And I don't have any way to find out until we actually go into the game and test it, which is another reason why I need to make sure that I account for all of this to QA before we try to post it, live someplace. By the way, none of this is going into Update 34, because Update 34 needs to not be corrupted by my random interference. So anyway, so that's what history now does. I'm just going to save this. Takes a little bit longer to save, but there you go. There is now a skill in the game called history, but no one is ever going to get it, because the only way you get skills is through traits. Traits is what gives you skills. So let's find, I don't know, is there a trait out there that has something to do with history? We've got Rifle Collector. I mean, Rifle Collector might have something to do with history, right? We're already adding the shooting skill to this person. We could give them the history skill. And there's also, I think there was another one I saw. It was like Professor. Professor is one that, actually, let's see here. College Professor. This is somebody who might have the history skill. Except, so here's another problem. People sometimes don't like quirk skills. And so if I took an existing skill, an existing trait, and attached a quirk skill to it, a very common trait, I think people might actually complain because they're like, oh, great, another character with a quirk skill. So I'm going to have to think about this and decide, maybe what I should actually do is duplicate College Professor. So I'm going to copy and paste College Professor. And let's specifically make this a History Professor. So we're not going to mess with any of your existing college professors, and let's make this one significantly less common. And honestly, I don't even need to I don't even need to change this. They're even talking about being a history professor. And then the only thing I'm going to change is, in addition to just doing the same wit specialties that they already were doing, I'm just going to add. Actually, it's not even this one. Oh, it is this one. But yeah, I'm going to add the history skill, which has already added. You notice I just saved it. I just barely made the history skill. It is already added to the validation list here, which is great. Somebody designed some really good tools on our team. And then we're going to add 1 star to the history skill. Let's type that in again. Add 1 star to the history skill. And we're going to limit the history skill. Nope. Limit the history skill to 1 star. And this is how we actually do. This is the hackiest thing ever. All of your 1-star skills, you would think that they're a special class of skill that only has 1 star. No, every time we implement one of them in a trait, we manually limit it to 1 star because it was a late game decision. We just used the tools that we had. So anyway, so now we've got this one trait, a very rare trait, that could give someone the history skill that will then increase everyone's XP rate. So hopefully that doesn't sound valuable enough to you that you're all going to be like, spamming the random button forever to try to get a history professor, because it's not going to happen very often. There are 1,300 plus of these traits. But there you go.